The ship of state's in a hell of a state. Rudderless might be the word, or holed below the waterline. ULEZ is the latest squall, but only a part of something bigger and more sinister, looming all around. Uncontrolled migration is part of the same man-made weather system, part of making people angry and keeping people angry. Neither is what it appears to be. ULEZ is billed as a health measure, but it's just highway robbery and cover for the introduction of more surveillance cameras, spectacularly vulnerable and temporary cameras, as it turns out. The migration is the free movement of people. Any British government that wanted to stem the flow or stop it would do so in a day, but the puppets pretending to govern aren't allowed to. I said the word to use about the ship of state might be rudderless, but that would be to fall for the carefully curated optical illusion. It's being steered all right, but by officers none of us proles chose and towards a destination none of us wants, except, of course, the people who plotted the course long ago. No one with a brain thinks Rishi Sunak is running Britain, not even his colleagues. London Mayor Sadiq Khan, another homunculus in a suit from the boys' department, loathes Britain and is laying waste to a once great city, and the puppet government is fine with it. Khan sows racial hatred and social unrest to accomplish the same destruction the Romans inflicted on Carthage by ploughing salt into fertile fields so nothing would ever grow there again. Keir Starmer and the fake Labour Party await their turn at the tiller, but all they'll do is shovel more coal into the furnaces, more speed towards the iceberg. It mystifies me that journalists interview these frauds as though they matter. I'd no more ask a senior politician what was going on in Britain than I would a character from a soap opera. Grant Shapps as Defence Secretary. Do me a favour. You might as well make one of my wolfhounds Defence Secretary. She'd have as much meaningful input to policy. At least Jessie's a real wolfhound. Don't fall for any of it. If I had the resources, I'd have "It's never about what they say it's about" plastered onto perpetually orbiting airships and projected onto the surface of the moon, where everyone might see it. ULEZ is the flicking tail on the elephant in the room, the monstrous beast that is Agenda 21, a plan for one world government, misrepresented as good news. For those thinking it's about the year 2021 and that we've missed the deadline, Agenda 21 is a plan for the whole of the 21st century. Whatever the puppet government and the puppet opposition say about anything is always and only to distract from the real plan and therefore the real threat to our freedom and way of life. The misdirection and downright lying infect and corrupt every aspect of life. Otto von Bismarck is credited with saying, "The less people know about how laws and sausages are made, the better they'll sleep at night." That depends on whether you want to be asleep or awake, however uncomfortably. The sleepiness is everywhere. A long process of miseducation at school and a forced diet of propaganda for the rest of the time has, for instance, seen to the rearing of a population that either thinks money and the economy are too complicated for them to understand, or has accepted the furry end of the lollipop stick handed to them by the powers that be. Inflation. What they would have us believe is to blame for the cost of living crisis, which is really a cost of lockdown crisis, is caused always and only by government working hand in glove with the banks to make themselves rich and everyone else poor. Inflation is caused always and only by the printing of money. Quantitative easing, as they have called it most recently, although dodgy types alighted on the tactic thousands of years ago to keep their subjects poor, is a transparent attempt to disguise a Ponzi scheme, the Ponzi scheme being modern currencies, which is the conjuring into existence of money from nothing, which only banks are allowed to do. Every time they magic up more money, put more of the currency into circulation in whatever form, what they actually do, in fact, all they do, is devalue any money you had in your pocket or in savings. This is deliberate. This is why excess money is created in the first place. Just as a for instance, since the creation of the so-called Federal Reserve in the United States in 1913, which is not federal, being a private company run for profit by secretive bankers and holds a reserve of precisely nothing, the actual value of the dollar has fallen by at least 90, if not actually 98%. Inflation is the invisible tax. I'll say that again for emphasis. The invisible tax almost everyone has been tricked into not seeing, far less being angry about. The same trick, a trick that would be illegal if any of us tried it, is pulled here in Britain by our own central bank, the Bank of England, and by central banks around the world, all of them in service to the Bank for International Settlements, in splendid isolation in Geneva, in Switzerland, where none of us can affect its operation in any way. Our government, everyone's government, be it nominally democratic, fascist, totalitarian, communist, or monster raving loony, it makes no difference, uses banks to put people into debt and then continuously devalues the currency by creating more money, always out of nowhere, and so making it harder and harder, all but impossible in fact, for anyone ever to be free of that debt. If all debt was repaid, all money would vanish. You heard me right. If you understand that much, you understand the money flow of the world. This stuff is hiding in plain sight, but so easy to understand when you bother to look at it. And I say that as someone who got a C in maths. It's easy to understand, but only if you don't look over there at the suspicious wildfires in Greece and the incomprehensible fires in Maui and the wildly lucrative war in Ukraine and a new COVID variant and the migrants being shepherded ashore every day and used most recently to displace students from their booked and paid for accommodation to sow more fury. If you don't look over there at all that, or when you do, understand it for what it is, distraction gone awry, but back here instead, where the pretend government is cooking the books and selling Britain down the river, once you see it, you can't believe you overlooked it for so long. I said most of the value of the dollar has been wiped out. So too that of the pound, the euro, you name it. The national currencies around the world are Ponzi schemes, teetering on the brink of collapse and held up only by malpractice and lies. The next step, maybe not today and maybe not tomorrow, but when the people think they can't take any more uncertainty, will be central bank digital currencies. And here we get back to the monster, the elephant in the room that most neither acknowledge nor talk about, indeed that most don't even see, which is Agenda 21. ULEZ is part of Agenda 21, CBDC is part of it, digital ID is part of it, surveillance cameras and checkpoints are part of it, 15-minute ghettos are part of it, cycle lanes are part of it. The devaluing of money is part of the softening up. The ever-increasing debt is part of that, the stoking of anxiety, of fear, of hatred of other, climate crisis and forever war, all about destroying the old and ushering in the new. In 1992, in Rio de Janeiro, 179 countries agreed plans for a sustainable future for planet Earth. Sustainable is a weasel word in this context, chosen to seduce. Just as everyone would support a project to protect puppies and kittens from cruelty, so no one would say they were opposed to sustaining life on Earth. Sustainable, in the hands of the authors of Agenda 21, however, is dread-laden and means your way of life, my way of life, and the way of life you'd hoped for your children is unsustainable and forbidden. In summary, the way of life that has been described as middle class is, according to those pushing Agenda 21, unsustainable and must end. The usual mouthpieces of the mainstream will dismiss this as conspiracy theory, but what is undeniable is that it's out there in plain sight. There's even a 344-page book available on Amazon called Agenda 21, Earth Summit, the United Nations Programme of Action from Rio, priced £11.04 in paperback. What someone somewhere has decided is sustainable is to be made possible by, to quote American campaigner Rosa Koire, the late great siren warning of all things Agenda 21, control of all land, all water, all minerals, all plants, all animals, all construction, all means of production, all food, all information, and all human beings in the world. Corey pointed out how an unholy union of corporations, non-governmental organisations and governments is pushing ever more desperately towards a world in which the entire population is concentrated in densely populated cities. What's intended is a world of public-private partnerships, what the WEF's Klaus Schwab calls stakeholder capitalism, that takes all power and decision-making away from the people and places it in the hands of entities over which we, the voting public, have zero influence, far less control. A person can easily sense the impotent wrath of Khan, wee Sadiq, as he receives the daily reports of the popular dismantling of his ULEZ infrastructure, as well as a vast majority of his surveillance cameras being put out of action by citizen soldiers. God bless you all. The legal basis of his efforts is being challenged too. Worth observing that Sadiq Khan is being embarrassed not just in front of Londoners and the wider British public, but also in front of his pals in the C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group, of which he has been chairman since 2021. I don't know if you know, but C40 is, according to its Wikipedia page, focused on fighting the climate crisis and driving urban action that reduces greenhouse gas emissions and climate risks. It's also in bed with proposals to end flying and shipping by 2050, cutting home heating, banning beef and lamb, and ending building with bricks, cement, glass and steel in favour of rammed earth, what you might call the building of mud huts. Here's the thing, the future being discussed might permit existence for the likes of you and me, but will be no life I recognise as honourable or worth living. Altogether now, tell them they can stick the whole joyless, totalitarian, hypocritical, anti-human lot of it where the sun don't shine.